The plane jolted so hard that coffee flew through the cabin like rain. For a split second, everything went silent, then the screaming began. Overhead lights flickered, oxygen masks dropped, and the calm voice of the flight attendant cracked as she tried to speak. Somewhere between the shaking metal and the terrified prayers, a 22-year-old passenger opened his eyes and realized something terrifying: this plane was going down. And strangely, he knew exactly what to do. Ethan Parker had never liked flying. He sat by the window, gripping the armrest, trying to ignore the storm outside. The clouds looked like angry mountains, rising and falling as the plane struggled through them. Around him were people from all walks of life: a tired mother holding her baby, an old man clutching a photograph, a young couple arguing softly, pretending they weren't afraid. Ethan felt the fear too, but deeper than that, he felt something else. A responsibility he couldn't explain. The captain's voice came over the intercom, this time without the usual confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing technical difficulties. Please remain seated and follow crew instructions." The words were polite, but the tone was honest. This was bad. As the plane dipped again, a woman screamed his name, though she didn't know him. "Someone help," she cried, pointing to the aisle where a flight attendant had collapsed. Panic spread like fire. People unbuckled their seatbelts. Someone started crying out loud. Someone else prayed. Ethan stood up, his legs shaking, but his mind was clear. 2 years earlier, Ethan had dropped out of college after his father died. He had spent months feeling lost, until he joined a small aviation safety program in Vancouver, just to stay busy. He wasn't a pilot, he wasn't a hero, but he had learned one thing very well: what panic does to people, and how to stop it. "Everyone, sit down," Ethan shouted, his voice stronger than he felt. Heads turned. Fear paused. "Please, sit down. You're not helping yourselves or anyone else." A few people listened. Most didn't. Ethan rushed to the fallen flight attendant, checked her pulse, and dragged her gently to a seat. He grabbed the intercom, his hands trembling. For a second he hesitated, then spoke. "This is not a drill," he said. "But we still have a chance. You need to listen. Buckle your seatbelts. Put your phones away. Hold the person next to you if you're scared. We survive this together." Something changed in the cabin. Not calm, never calm, but focus. The crying softened. The shouting stopped. A little boy reached for his mother's hand. The old man kissed his photograph and closed his eyes. Ethan ran to the cockpit door, which was open now. The co-pilot was bleeding. The captain was fighting the controls with all his strength. Ethan didn't ask questions. He just said, "Tell me what you need." The next few minutes felt like hours. The plane dropped fast, the ground rushing closer, the alarms screaming. Ethan followed instructions, relayed messages, kept people seated, kept them breathing. He wasn't fearless. He was terrified. But fear didn't control him anymore. And then, impact. Not the explosion everyone expected. Not the end. Just a violent crash, a slide, and finally, silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, the cabin was broken, but alive. People were crying, hugging, calling names. Outside, snow-covered ground stretched into the distance. The plane had landed, barely, on an empty field near a small northern town. Emergency lights blinked. Survivors stumbled out, breath turning to fog in the cold Canadian air. Ethan stood there shaking, his clothes torn, his face wet with tears he didn't remember crying. A woman he had never met hugged him tightly. Then another. Then another. Someone said, "You saved us." Someone else said, "You didn't let us give up." Later, as rescue crews arrived and blankets were wrapped around trembling shoulders, Ethan sat alone on the snow, staring at the broken plane. He wasn't thinking about being brave. He was thinking about his father, about all the days he felt useless, about how close life always is to ending, and to beginning again. That night, news cameras called him a hero. But Ethan knew the truth. He was just a 22-year-old who chose to stand up when everything was falling apart. And sometimes, that choice is the difference between fear and survival, between giving up and going on. Because courage isn't about having no fear. It's about listening to the quiet voice inside you that says, "Do something, right now, before it's too late."